Thanks, brother. Thank you much. John chapter 14. Go ahead and get John 14 opened up in front of you if you would tonight. And then I plan on chatting with you just for a brief moment after you get that opened up in front of you. The 14th chapter of John. Would you please get that ready to go? I don't know how many people approach me tonight with this. Oh man, I'm late. If you were here last night, you get it. But one man suggested, I thought it would be funny, he said, if we just all walked in real late, the whole congregation walked in late. And so I said, that would not be funny. That would not be funny at all. But I get it. It's hilarious. The truth is, I've loved being able to connect with you here for, as I told you on Sunday morning, very, very fast days together. But I want to say thank you for your faithfulness and your attendance here to be with us service after service after service. And genuinely, the idea of promoting tomorrow night, it is not really a thing that I don't like the word promote, but it's important that you think about what tomorrow night holds for all of us. It's going to be a very special night in the sense it'll be different, just be different. A Wednesday night, we're going to start in the gymnasium, the activity center. I'm not sure which is the word you best call that room, where many of you decorated the pastors with tape on the wall on Sunday evening. We're going to meet in there and have a delicious meal. Men, women, all of us will be there together to start off with. There'll be some games that will take place, especially for the men afterwards. And then we will split. The ladies are going to go in their particular direction. Melinda, where are you meeting again tomorrow night? Oh, from the beginning. You're not even eating with us. Oh, ladies, I'm sorry about that. Not really. It gives us more food. But anyway, I'm not real sure. Anyway, 6:30 tomorrow night. By the way, don't forget that. It's at 6:30 tomorrow night. Don't forget that, all right? Some of you are guilty of, anyway. I will meet in the gymnasium. I was just going by what you said. I think we all thought we were all together, but I should have asked the one who's really in charge. And I'm sorry. My mind starts spinning up here, and I start saying things. I'm going to get myself in trouble with everybody here. Tomorrow night, ladies will be meeting in the fellowship hall. And then the men will be in the activity center / gymnasium. Be some fun games taking place in there. And then I'll be given the opportunity to give a brief challenge. You say, what's brief? About 25 minutes, 30 at the most, which basically means a gospel, straight, direct gospel message. Now, don't let tomorrow night come and go and you go, oh, he really meant that, a gospel message. Oh, I should have gotten my neighbor here. Now, don't let that happen. All right? Don't let the service pass you by. And again, we can't make people come that don't want to come, but just have them, maybe, gentlemen, you can get a friend to come that would not normally come to sit in the auditorium, but will come and enjoy a barbecue dinner and have some fun games and then hear a brief message that would be truly, possibly instrumental in changing their life. The great thing about the Word of God and the gospel of Jesus Christ, here's the cool thing. Romans chapter 1 says that the gospel of Christ is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth. And here's the great thing about it. It just needs to be unleashed. It just needs to be set free, turned loose. And you never know when you witness to someone or when you allow them to come and hear the gospel, you don't know, is this going to be the very first time for them to hear it? Or is this the third, fourth, fifth time? The fact is, sometimes that watering and the planting of the seed is just needs time, and the events of an individual's life leads them to a particular service, and it's like the light comes on and they go, well, I don't know that I've ever heard this before. And they probably have. But the Spirit of the Lord opens their eyes to understand the good news of Jesus Christ. So you be here, and all of God's people. I love the song that says, I love to tell the story. For those who know it best, seem hungering and thirsting to hear it like the rest. I never get tired of hearing about God's plan of salvation. So you plan to come, and we'll look forward to being here at 6:30 tomorrow night. Have a great time. and hearing the Word of God. But I'm so glad you're here tonight. I really am. Thank you for coming. Again, I've said it before, I don't know who may be here as a guest or as someone who occasionally comes, or if you're always here. All right, I know some of you are always here, but others of you I may not know. So I've tried to meet a lot of you, but as best I know how, I've tried to. But if you're a guest, thank you for coming, and I hope that you can plan to come tomorrow night as well, all right? Have I given you enough time to find John chapter 14? All right, as I've tried to ramp up, my pastor used to tell me, he said, Morris, you ramp up longer than anybody I ever know. I said, well, it takes me a while. I get nervous when I get in the pulpit to just kind of howdy with people. Down in Texas, we say, howdy, how you doing? You know, well, I'm just doing my howdy time with you, and as we get into the scriptures. I don't know about you, but when you think about John chapter 14, if your mind is in gear, your mind may automatically be thinking, let's see, John 14. Oh yeah, John 14. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. Oh, that's where Jesus was comforting his disciples just before he went to the cross of Calvary, and you'd be exactly right. I try to use my sanctified imagination when I'm reading my Bible, and I try to picture myself being in the rooms and being on the mountains when Jesus taught and being at the events which you read in the Bible. Picture it happening. Don't just read words. Imagine being there. You may have these words memorized in John 14. But don't just rattle them off like, Jesus stood there and said, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe. No, don't do that. I wonder if Jesus looked at his disciples and he could tell that it was dawning upon them. He really is going to leave them. They've been fighting him and arguing with him. And Peter, of course, sticking that foot in his mouth once again, said, oh, no, you're not going to, no, we're not going to let that happen to you. And, of course, Jesus said, Satan, get behind me, in that temptation that was attacking Jesus at that moment. They've been arguing with him about leaving. No, your kingdom, it's going to get established. But it seems like maybe the light was going on in their head, and Jesus is looking at their troubled faces. They were having that Last Supper together. And can you not see a caring shepherd loving his flock, a caring instructor, master teacher, caring for his class? As he says to them, don't let your heart be troubled. Can you see? Can you hear him say, hey, fellas, come up close. Listen to me. You believe in God, don't you? Well, believe also in me. Hey, fellas, listen to this. In my Father's house, get this, there are many mansions, dwelling places that are breathtaking. Yeah. I'm going to go. But I'm going to go and prepare a place for you. That where I am, there you may be also. It's going to be great. And if I go, I will come again and gather you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And the conversation continues. And he continues to comfort them. In fact, I think 3 of the sweetest chapters in the Bible are John 14, 15, and 16. Incredible words that come from the mouth of the Lord Jesus. As he instructs them about, now that I'm going to be leaving, I want you to know the Spirit of God. I'm going to ask the Father, I'm going to pray the Father that he will send another comforter. That word another means someone just like me. Exactly the same. Another comforter, and he will be with you. The Spirit will be with you. It was like Jesus was saying, now look, when I'm over here with Andrew and I'm talking to Andrew, I can't talk to Philip over there because I can't be in two different places. But when I leave, I'm going to be with every one of you. The Father's going to send the Spirit, someone just like me. I'm going to be with you in the Spirit of the Lord God. I'll be with every one of you. And he goes on in chapter 15, so he says to them, so abide with me. Take up residence with me. Those 3 chapters are just packed. I ran across a verse when I was a teenager during a time in which I was a bit depressed, filled with distress and a little bit of maybe discouragement of one sort or another, insecurity, maybe the best word for it, emotional sense of loss in my life. My dad had died. I didn't know what my future held. I ran across a verse here in John chapter 14. And I'll just be perfectly honest with you. I knew it was there, but I lost track of it in my heart and in my life until just a few years ago. And God brought it back to me. And it has become an anchor verse in my life. And I want you to see it, verse 27. Jesus himself speaking to his disciples, he's saying, I'm leaving you an inheritance. He says in verse 27, peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. He's repeating it. Why? Because Jesus is a teacher. Any teacher will tell you the most important instruction that you do in a class is repeat, repeat, repeat. And he's giving a command. Stop allowing your heart to be troubled. But notice the very first word, peace. The word shalom, peace, was a term that became a greeting among God's people after his crucifixion and resurrection, and certainly his ascension. It became a word of greeting, shalom, shalom. Jesus said to them, I leave you my shalom. I've never sat in one of those readings of the will. You see them sometimes on some TV program where a family sits there and they read the reading of a will, and they say, Uncle Willie leaves his $1.5 million to his sister, and his kids are going, what? What is the deal? And he leaves his car to the janitor who worked at his business down at this place, wherever, and he says, I leave to my kid, my cat. It's like, really, that's all? I've never been in one of those inheritance readings, but Jesus is giving a true inheritance reading when he said to his disciples, here's what I'm going to leave you. I'm leaving you my peace. Now, I'm a kid that was a teenager in the 1960s and 70s. That was my generation. That was my time. You know something? That was a unique time. You go back and study the history of much of America and the history of mankind, you're going to find that the 60s and 70s were cultural shifting times. Now, we're going through quite a cultural shifting time right now, but the 60s and 70s were certainly a part of that shifting. I mean, a lot of strange things were going on. I mean, they really were. Music took on a whole different style during those times. We had what was called the British invasion, and some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. All these British musicians came over, and that which Elvis and the other boys had started in the 50s took off in a direction that was an incredible influence upon the world, and it's going on to this day. Dress took on a whole different shifting during the 60s and 70s. For further reference, for some of you, go back and look at your yearbooks. and look at what you used to wear. And some of you go look at your parents' yearbooks and see what they wore. Strange colors, shapes. Guys would wear bell-bottom pants. I mean big bell-bottom pants. So big that you'd need about 6 feet on either side of you, to walk down the school hallway. I may be overstating that, but I mean big old bell bottoms and corduroys, which they come and go through the generations. But I mean, and different matching that didn't match. You'd wear something going this way here, and then your pants sometimes would not be solid colors. They'd have all different kind of colors. That we would have paisleys on our pants, the paisleys. And I'm not talking about little small paisleys. I'm talking about big boys on your pants. You say, Morris, how do you know? None of your business. And so we'd wear these pants, but it was the accepted norm. And the hairstyles, completely different during those days. Now, I can remember when they announced in our school, you talk about old. I am a dinosaur. I can remember when they announced in our school, we will no longer have a hair standard for the guys. And guys all over school, they could let their hair grow over their ears finally, Before that time, they couldn't do it. Then, as generations have come and gone, guys are shaving their head. They don't even want it that long anymore. But, it all changed during the 60s and 70s. I'll tell you something else that changed. Language. Language took on a real change during that time. In fact, I did a little research. I even went online. You can find anything online. And if it's online, it's probably true, don't you think? Well, I found words, vocabulary changes that took place in that generational time, the 60s and /70s and so forth. Words like this. Are you ready? The term cool. Cool. Hey, man, that's cool. It was birthed during that time. It's such a part of our vocabulary, we don't even think about it anymore. Prior to that time, the term cool was just nothing more but a reference to the temperature in a room or outside. Hey, it's kind of cool today. And we still use it for both. But if we like something, we go, hey, cool, man. Cool. And if it was really cool, we would use the term boss. Man, that's boss. Now, that has changed through the years. There's something, in fact, later on, if something was good, a kid would say, hey, man, that's bad. No, it's good. No, it's bad, man. It's bad. You have to kind of keep up with some of the vocabulary changes through the years. You really do. And, of course, I'm silly for even bringing this up because that's all changed through the years. Absolutely. Here's a word I'm glad didn't stick for very long. Every once in a while, you'll hear somebody use it, and it's a joke, all right? And it's the term groovy. That's groovy, man. That's weird is what that is. But that was a word that was used. And if you greeted somebody, today we can give a fist bump to somebody. Back in those days, it was for the first time ever, people would come up and they'd say, hey, give me 5. And then if you were really groovy, you would say, give me some skin, And you go, boom, boom, Well, that eventually changed to a high five and then a side bump and a chest bump and a head bump, and who knows where it's going to stop. I don't know. Where you greet people in all kinds of unique ways. Give me 5. And there was another term that was often used, and it usually was accompanied by a hand gesture, and it would help if you could slouch when you did it. Peace, man. Peace. All we just want peace. As we burn down your buildings, we just want peace, man. That's all. No war, make peace. Light that match and let's fight the authorities. Different versions of what peace is. Everybody knew what I was going to say when I held up that. It stands for peace from that generation. That was the world in which I grew up in. Politicians constantly promise, elect me, and I can bring peace. I can bring peace across the aisle in the halls of Congress. And we're still waiting on that. I'll help bring peace to the Middle East. Not till the Prince of Peace comes. We have our police force, thankfully. I'm still a believer, big time, in the police in our cities. They are the preservers of peace. We talk about having family peace, societal peace, global peace. Someone says, I just want a peace of mind. I just want to be at peace. I just want to have inner peace. And I don't say this, but a lot of times when someone dies, someone will say, may he rest in peace. NATO cannot give anybody peace. The United Nations cannot give peace. Politicians cannot give peace. Nobel Peace Prize winners cannot give peace. There's only one that can give peace. And he tells you right here, he is the giver of real peace. Jesus says, peace I leave with you. I suppose all of us in this room know somebody that's trying to find peace in some various way. They try to find it through an alcohol bottle. They try to find it in a drug needle. They try to find it in the world of pornography. They try to find it in a new job, a new spouse, a new car, a new house, a new location, a new church, a new fill in the blank. And nothing else is going to provide peace. Well, first of all, you got to know what is peace. Peace is making one. It's making two parties one. It's taking that which has been torn apart and making it one. So many times people are trying again to find something that will give them peace, and the only thing that reigns, listen, I'm telling you, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. You know this. The only thing that really reigns in our life is anxieties. Anxiety reigns. Anxiety abounds. And by the way, it's all over the scriptures in people's lives. Do you remember Elijah sat underneath the juniper tree after he had been greatly used of God? He's sitting underneath the juniper tree because of one woman saying, I'm going to take your life. I'm going to take your head off your shoulders. And yet he was so exhausted and he was so worn out and he became to be filled with so much fear that he ran hundreds of miles away from home and he had no peace. Abraham and Sarah were told that you're going to have a baby. You're going to be the father of a great nation. And he kept waiting. Abraham kept waiting and kept waiting and kept waiting. Finally, he and Sarah came up with a plan. Why don't you just take our handmaid Hagar and have a child from her because you're getting old, Abraham. God made a promise. Let's help God out. They didn't have peace. They had a baby through Hagar, and much of the Middle East is still struggling because of it. Job lacked peace while he was in the darkness of his own life. You read chapter 3 in the book of Job, and you'll read where he said, I wish I had never been born. He basically said that. He said, I wish the man who had come to tell my father that a man-child had been born would never have been able to do that. I wish I'd been stillborn. I wish I hadn't been born. He was depressed. And then there was Naomi. You know, the book of Ruth is an incredible book. Many times ladies are the only ones that really study it. I love the book of Ruth. It could have been written with the name of Naomi as the title. You read chapter 2, Naomi tells people, don't call me Naomi, which means pleasant one. Don't call me Naomi. Don't call me pleasant. Just call me Mara, which means I'm bitter of soul. I'm bitter of soul. I have no joy. I'm full of distress. She had no peace. And when I read that in chapter 2 of the book of Ruth, I just want to say, Naomi, just wait. Just wait. You don't have any idea what's about to happen. In 2 more chapters, you're going to be holding a grandbaby. Just hang in there. You're going to have so much peace, you'll be weeping tears of joy, so much so that you don't even get to name the baby. You go read chapter 4, book of Ruth. The neighbor ladies named the baby Obed. And so if you don't want your kid to have some strange name like Obed, don't cry all the time, ladies. I mean, here's Naomi. She's all torn up. Don't call me pleasant. Just call me unsettled. I'm just full of bitterness of soul. I have no peace. Okay. That's people in the Bible. How about you? Are you covering up your lack of peace? Or do you not even know much about peace, so much so that you hadn't even thought about it in such a long time? You have glimpses of enjoyment of life, but there's no calmness of soul. There's no sense of oneness. Now, let me pause right here and tell you something that is maybe for somebody the most important thing for you to hear tonight. Listen to the Bible. The Bible says in Romans 5 in verse 1, it says, therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God. Because until we are justified by faith, we are outside. We're not with God. We are apart from. We may know some things about God. We may have some things about Him explained and expressed to us. But until a person is justified by faith, what does that mean? It means that the at-one-ment of God, the atonement, has brought us at peace with God. Friends, though there is a war going on. There is a war going on with my sin nature until I recognize Jesus paid for my sin, and the war is over when I accept what He's done for me. Friends, there'll be an eternal war in hell of separation from Almighty God if you don't have this peace with God. Swallow your pride. Admit it. Talk to somebody if you need help. You say, but Morris, I've been in church all my life, and my spouse thinks that I'm saved, and my kids think I'm saved. Don't live without this peace with God. I'm not trying to create doubt. I'm talking to someone in this building that maybe someone in this building, you're not at peace with God. But for those who do have that peace with God because you have been justified with God by Christ, you don't have the peace of God. Philippians 4 and verse 6 says, be full of care about nothing. Be careful, full of care about nothing. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. There is a peace with God, and there is a peace of God. Many a person who's come to the knowledge of being at peace with God, you have a relationship with God by way of Jesus Christ, lives with anxiety. And you know very little of what Jesus is talking about here. He is telling His disciples, I'm leaving you something. Now, these were men who loved Him, followed Him, believed in Him, like I would guess the majority in this room, if not 100%, I don't know your heart, who sit in this room tonight. And He says this, you're going to need my peace, and I'm leaving it here for you. The peace of God. Colossians 3 and verse 15 says, let the peace of God rule in your hearts. Let it take charge. Let it be the referee of your life. You know what we've done? We've made an idol. We've made an idol out of having everything under control. Everything's going the way I want it to go. We've made a little g God out of being in control. And then along comes something called, I don't know, a pandemic. And we're not in control. And along comes a lost job. Along comes a flat tire. Along comes some broken situation in a relationship. And all of a sudden, our life falls apart. You say, Morris, you're being unkind. I'm being honest because I know exactly what I'm speaking of. Men, we in particular, we love to be in control. You know, we want to be in control of the TV remote, the car, the wheel, the air conditioning in the car. I mean, we just want to be in control of everything, you know. We make a God out of being in control. And when things get disrupted and things are not the way we want to be, we lose, we misplace, we get tripped up, and we don't have the peace of God in control. So 4 years ago, I sit in a doctor's office. January of 2018, after several x-rays, after 2 MRIs, the first I'd ever had, after a bone marrow biopsy in which they drilled down into the bone of my lower back, spine area, most painful thing I've ever gone through. The doctor looked at me and he said, okay, you have multiple myeloma. I'd never heard those words in my life. Never. And I said, doctor, is that cancer? He said, yes, it is. I dropped my head. I glanced at Lynn, and her face was filled with tears and redness of cheeks. And our world came to a screeching halt. My world is what I'm doing right now. Some of you have asked me, well, where do you live? What do you, this is my world right here. Where I live is wherever that car out there is parked. We have an address in Texas, and every once in a while I get to go enjoy it. But most of the time our life is on the road. And when that doctor told me I had cancer, I said, how long is this going to take? Can we have surgery? Can you just remove whatever this pain is in my back? Can you just get rid of it? He said, it's going to take a while. I said, how long? He said, months. I said, this is what I do. I preach, doctor. I just can't stop. He said, you're going to have to. And I refound John 14:27. It became an anchor in the turbulence of my life. I clung to it, as well as 2-3 other passages that became anchors in my life. I clung to John 14:27. And at times when the wind and the fears and the howling storms of wondering what the future held for me just really beat upon the soul of my life, I clung to John 14:27. Jesus said, I leave you my peace. Do any of these words describe you? Panicked, fearful, frantic, worried, stressed, depressed. Maybe not on a permanent basis, but do you find those things lift their heads up periodically in your life? Do you find yourself, what are we going to do? You watch a little news, you go, what is this world coming to? I can tell you on another sermon at another time what this world's coming to. But if you're not careful tonight, you can let a newscaster cause you to live a life of worry. And some of you even here tonight probably, or maybe possibly, I don't know, maybe getting a little bit uncomfortable saying, oh, are you going to preach on worry? Don't worry about it. Because all of us have these little trigger things in our life that we tend to say, what are we going to do about this? And we fret. Now, maybe right now you don't, but you know as well as you're sitting here tonight, when things get disturbed, when you can't find your ballpoint pen, when you can't find your glasses, when you can't find your car keys, when you can't find your car. You're walking around the parking lot with that little fob. Talk to me, car. Where are you? And someone says, what's your problem? I'm fine. And we get frantic. Jesus says, I leave you my peace. Are you a peaceful, peace-filled person? Or is your life, is your home a place of constant sense of turbulence and fear that something's going to cause great upheaval? Would you note with me several things from this verse? I've already touched the first thing, and that's this: the necessity of peace. Jesus is saying here, this is a necessity. When he said there, if you'll look at it, peace I leave with you, the word you, if you really want to know a technical truth about it, friends, it's in the plural. You say, well, so what? Well, it is a so big so what. Here's what Jesus was saying. He was saying, every single one of you or in this room that's under my voice, I'm telling you something, You're all going to need my peace. Jesus did not say, okay, you 7, you sit up and listen to me because I've got something just for you. The rest of you, can you just sit still? I'll get back with you in a minute because you don't really need this. That's not what he's saying. He is saying, every single one of you are going to need my peace. Can you remember who it is he's talking to? He's talking about some of the greatest men that have ever walked on this planet. He's talking to men that he had already greatly used to be proclaimers of his coming kingdom. These are men who would later on write great portions of the Scripture. These are men that had been anointed of God. They were followers of the Lord. They were men that we can admire. And he said to them, you're going to need my peace. So come up close to your Scriptures and listen to me tonight. If those men were going to need the peace of God, then friends, don't beat yourself up tonight if you sit here and you recognize, there are times in which I don't have this peace, but I sure need it. And if Peter needed it, and if Andrew, and if little James needed it, and if Thaddeus needed it, then so do I, and it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Jesus says, I leave this. It's a necessity. Like you need water to drink, you're going to need my peace. Why? Well, because problems. I don't need to take time to start naming all the problems that come into my life or in yours. Because of people. People can take away your peace. Don't look at anybody in this building right now and say, he's talking about you. No, don't do that, all right? Folks, when I joke, it would be really nice if you could at least give me a smile, okay? I'm just teasing with you here. People can snatch away your peace at work, at school, strangers. Wherever you go, they can snatch away your peace all the time. People, problems, and sometimes your own personality. You're bent toward being a worrier. Well, brother, if you knew my mother worried over the price of bacon all the time. Well, I'd get over that and keep buying bacon if I were you. But the point is, here's the deal. Sometimes your own personality that you have developed through the years can become one that is just bent toward being, and you walk into a room kind of carrying the weight of the world, and someone says, how are you doing? And you say, well, and you want to say, I don't need a full-scale report. I'm just greeting you. Some people are that Eeyore character in a Winnie the Pooh book. Oh, thanks for noticing me, could be much better, but I don't know if it ever will. You're like that kid in a cartoon, the Peanuts cartoon, that's got the cloud of dust hanging over him all the time. I never can remember his name, but you know who I'm talking about. He's just always got the cloud hanging over himself. Everyone in this room is trying to tell me the name right now. Don't worry about it. You know who I'm talking about. The point I'm trying to get to you tonight is sometimes your own personality can make you a person who has a lack of peace. Don't you want what Jesus is saying? You need this, and I'm leaving this for you. And I'm going to tell you in a moment how you can have it. The peace of God. Friends, listen. When you don't have this peace, you already know this, but I got to say it. It affects your marriage. Now, you know that. Because you take it out on the one that's closest to you. It affects the mentoring of your kids because you'll take it out on your kids. It'll affect your ministry. I can think back right now to Sunday school teachers, especially in my youth, that would walk into the room in Sunday school or in youth meetings, and they'd walk in the door, and they had the biggest smile on their face, and they'd walk in the door with a sense of, hey, guys, great to see you. Man, we're going to have a great time here. And I'm telling you something, those guys, I'm sure they had problems at work, and I'm sure they had problems with their finances, and I'm sure they had issues going on in their life, but when they got around us young people, they just came in with a sense of great peace in their life, and I thank God for those dear people. They lightened. They turned on the light in the room, whatever room they walked into. Why? Because they had the peace of God. And yet we've all been around people. They carry the weight of the world. They haven't smiled since they were 7 years old. And they're just really down all the time. And if you talk to them, no, I'm not down. Well, okay. You might want to do something about the countenance because it sure doesn't look like it. You know what I've discovered? I'm talking about me, friends. I'm talking about me. Listen, you know what I've discovered? When you don't have this kind of peace, there are several things that are outgrowths. Let me just mention these. I don't have time to spend a lot of time on it. Can I just tell you some of the outgrowth that comes from a person who doesn't have this kind of peace? I'm talking about us, people who know the Lord. You'll have little to no passion for the work of God. You'll have little to no passion for the work of God. You just go through the motions. You're stuck in maintenance mode. You're just coasting. The passion for the things of God, they're just not there. Why? Because the peace of God has departed. Or it's not departed, you haven't accessed it. There's little passion to sing. There's little passion to rejoice in the goodness of the Lord. Number two, you're easily angered. Things tick you off. Things disturb you. People irritate you. You begin to question the motives of other people. You begin to see people and you think you know exactly what they're doing and what they ought to do. We can become judgmental of other people. We're easily angered. Let me build upon that. We become cynical. Cynicism takes over. We see the ugly in life. We see the ugly in people. We see the ugly in tasks. We see the ugly in ministry. Cynicism takes over. I'll tell you something else. We can't think straight. I know I've already kind of touched this. We don't think straight. We don't think straight about ourselves. Our heart controls our head. Though in our head we know the truth, but our emotions are so caught up with the lack of peace. We don't think straight. We don't think straight about myself. I'm just not a good dad. I'm just not a good whatever, fill in the blank. I'm just not good at anything. And you don't think right, and you're not as productive spiritually. And the sad thing is you get to the point to where you don't even care. These things kind of overlap, but this is when you find out that you're not just tired, you've become spiritually exhausted. And I'll tell you one more thing and I'll drop this. You become resentful of other people for enjoying life. Why are they? Don't they have the same problems I'm having? So everybody in this room probably can know, somebody that's living in another part of the country and it just seems like they don't have any problems whatsoever. Yeah, they got problems. And yet you can become resentful of other people who are enjoying life or enjoying ministry, and there's not much laughter in your life. Why? Because you've become a person who's lacking this peace. Listen to what the psalmist said, and he said it to himself. Psalm 42:5 and Psalm 42 and verse 11. He said, "Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you disquieted, distressed, depressed within me?" Come on. I'm adding that. "Hope thou in God, who shall yet," future tense, "who shall yet be the health of my countenance." Do you hear what he's saying? I like what the preacher of yesteryear said. He said, the psalmist said, I'm going to stop listening to myself and I'm going to start talking to myself. Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you so depressed within me? Hope in God, who shall yet be the health of my countenance. Here's what Jesus is saying. Look at our verse. Peace I leave with you. What's he saying? He's saying, you've got it. You have it. I don't think the average Christian knows what he or she has. I don't think some of you know what you possess. I think many times I've had to remind myself, Morris, you've clung to this, you've preached this, you've taught this, now live it. I have something that I may not feel like I have, but I have. Jesus says you have it. Peace I leave with you. It's there. I don't think we know what we have. One day Lynn came home and she said, I bought a bunch of stuff. She said, I bought us some new toothbrushes. And I said, oh, okay, good. She goes, here's yours. And I said, okay. And so I'm brushing my teeth, and I'd probably been using that toothbrush for about, 2-3 weeks. And one morning I'm rinsing my mouth out and I'm shaking my toothbrush at the same time, and I happened to hit the side of my porcelain sink, and all of a sudden my toothbrush went. I looked at that thing. I said, Lynn, My toothbrush is vibrating. She said, are you just now realizing it was a vibrating toothbrush? I said, I didn't know that. I'm doing it the old-fashioned way, you know. Kind of getting a workout while I'm brushing my teeth. You didn't tell me I'd have. She said, what do you think that little button is there on your toothbrush? I said, I thought it was decoration. I didn't know, you know. I started playing with it. Off, on, off, on. I didn't know what I had. I'm preaching this sermon. You can sit here tonight and say, you know, this is nice little theological pie in the sky stuff. And many of God's people don't recognize this is what Jesus says you have. Peace I leave with you. The necessity of peace. Number 2, the superiority of this peace. It is far superior than anything else that this world offers. Look at the verse. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. What does the world give? Well, the world gives peace that is counterfeit. It's not real. The world gives peace that is cheap. The world gives peace that is conditional. Okay, I have peace because all my bills got paid this month. I have peace because my ball team is winning. I don't know who your ball team is. If it's the Indianapolis Colts, your peace is struggling tonight. The world gives peace that is conditional based upon if the doctor's report was good last month. It's good. But you know that peace is short term. It's cheap. It's conditional. It's counterfeit. Jesus said, I'm leaving you. Do you see what he said? My peace. Now, friends, what does that mean? Jesus knew that in a few hours from this moment, this very moment that he's talking to his disciples, he knew that he would be beaten. He'd be slapped. He'd be spat upon. He'd have his beard plucked out. He'd have people nailing him to a cross. And they said, if you're the Son of God, why don't you just come down off the cross? And he'd have one of the criminals yelling at him for a while, telling him, why don't you prove to them who you are? And never one time when Jesus got hit did Jesus retaliate and say, let me tell you who I am. What do you see from Jesus? Peace. You never see an anxiety attack on the part of Jesus. Never, never. You don't even see a hint of it. You don't see him retaliating. He was reviled, but he reviled not back. And Jesus said, I'm leaving you that kind of peace. Can you wrap your brain around that? Jesus says, no matter what is going on in the storms of your life, I'm leaving you my peace. I found myself thinking about Peter down there in that prison when James has already had his head cut off, the first pastor of the Jerusalem church. And now Peter's in that prison, and the church gathered together, and they're praying for Peter to be delivered. And the angel came, and what did the angel have to do? Had to wake him up. Why? I think he had peace. Yeah, I may die tomorrow. I may die in the next week. You know, I'm at peace. The angel had to awaken him and say, get up, to deliver him from that jail. Can I tell you that this is a peace that these disciples saw Jesus portray by the very life choices that Jesus demonstrated before his disciples. And Jesus is saying, you want a superior peace? I'm leaving you my peace. Not only is there a necessity of this peace, but there is a superiority of this peace. You can't beat it. You can't find it any other place. It's like the time when my son had his hand cut. He was a 5-year-old boy. He cut his hand on a sharp fence, and it scared him. It scared us. We rushed him to the doctor, and the doctor was trying to sew him up. They had his hand up above his head, and they were sewing his hand up, and his hand was frightened, and his whole body was shaking, and the doctor was working on it. Finally, the doctor turned. We were in the room. The doctor turned, and he said to us, can you help me? He goes, I can't sew up his hand. He's shaking too much. I didn't know what else to do but just go over, and I just got Andy's eye. You know Andy. I went over, and I looked down in his face, and I said, son, it's going to be all right. He's got his hand above his head. I said, just look at me. Everything's going to be all right. Daddy says it's going to be all right. I'll just keep it still. Can I say to you tonight, Jesus said, don't think that I'm just giving you some sweet by and by kind of a talk. He says, keep your eye on me. In fact, Isaiah said it in Isaiah 26 and verse 3. You know this verse? What does he say? He says there in Isaiah, he said, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Notice he said, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace. Friends, listen to me. He could have said, thou wilt keep him in peace, and we would have enjoyed that. But he said perfect peace. You go study the language, you'll find that he was making a repeated, he was inculcating the statement, thou wilt keep him in peace, peace. It's a double emphasis, not just peace, perfect peace. And one day when we get to heaven, everything will be in triplicate. We will there in heaven have peace, peace, peace with the holy, holy, holy God. But right here on earth, we can have peace, peace. What's troubling your soul? Is it your kids? Is it your job? Is it your health? Is it your secure retirement plan? Is it something else? Your nation? Your political voice? What's troubling you? Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. The superiority of this peace. Number 3, the accessibility of this peace. You know, we could have stopped right there and you could have said, Morris, this is nice little verbiage of importance, and I agree with what you're saying. But, you know, Morris, on the day-to-day plane of my life, there was a book written for teenagers years ago that said, if God is so good, why can't I get my locker open? You know, teenagers frustrated trying to get their okay, we can smile at the teenager struggling with a combination lock on a locker, but we have our combination locks. If God is so good, why is this happening to me? We all have them. So how do you access this peace? The accessibility of this peace. Well, it's right here. Look at verse 27. Jesus said, peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Then he says, as a command. It sounds poetic. It sounds like a song, but he is giving a command. Stop allowing your heart to be troubled. Neither let it be afraid. It's a command. So what's he saying? He's saying this, I've given you my peace. Take it. Now stay with me. Take it. If you were sitting down with somebody, presenting to them the gospel of Jesus Christ and showing them the way to eternal life and the forgiveness of their sin and having their sin nature rescued from holy God. That's what being saved means, being saved from the divine wrath of a holy God. What would you start with? You would start by explaining to them that they're sinners. We all are. And that what you need to do is recognize you could not pay for your sin, that someone's already paid for your sin. Jesus paid what you could not pay. So you need to accept Jesus Christ. And in an effort to explain that to somebody, what would you tell them? You would say, he offers to you a full pardon. He offers to you his grace. He offers to you forgiveness. And that person may be going, I want to go to heaven. I don't want to go to hell. Then accept God, listen, at his word, and we'd use these words, by faith. He promised, take him at his word. Now, all that makes sense to all of you. You know what Jesus is saying here? I leave you my peace. Yeah, but no, don't come up with excuses. Access this peace, here it comes, by faith. He promised. It sounds something like this. Lord, I'm really having a tough time. I'm scared. I'm troubled. I'm going in to see the doctor. Or I just got out of the doctor's office and heard something I didn't want to hear. Lord, the boss is upset, and I tried to fulfill the project. And Lord, my kid is having trouble at school, and I don't know if she going to make it out of that class this year. And God, we're struggling to pay these bills, and Lord, you know we need a new roof on the house. God, the tires are about shot on the car. Lord, I can't afford this insurance anymore. What am I going to do? Lord, I'm struggling. You promised me peace. So as best I know how, I'm accessing your peace right now. You promised. I believe you. I take you at your word. Now, it made sense when you're leading someone to Jesus Christ. Let it make sense to you, child of God, who have peace with God, to understand to have the peace of God. You take him at his word. Jesus said, I'm leaving this for you. So stop being troubled. Stop being afraid. Now, do we ever completely stop? No, not till we get to glory. But there ought be steady improvement and growth in my life and in your life, that when the hardships and the disturbances come along in your life, things that you weren't prepared for, you say, okay, Lord, as best I know how, I'm accessing your peace. Friends, don't misunderstand. I'm not talking about the power of positive thinking. Or like some yahoo in Houston, Texas, you can have your best life now. We're not talking about that. With that constant smile. I don't know how he goes to bed at night with his jaw. Nevertheless, it's not that phony stuff. We're talking about the peace that can almost be put into the right kind of words. We're talking about a grace gift that God says, I've given this to you. So I sat up in a hospital bed after getting 2 doses of heavy chemotherapy, the sickness that came with it. Then stem cells that had already been taken out of me previous to getting into the hospital were pumped back into my system to get that stem cell bone marrow transplant. My doctor told me, he says, an amazing thing, those stem cells, when put back into your body, they know exactly where they belong. They go exactly to their place. And I said, Doctor, do you think there's a divine creator? He said, yes, there is. I laid in that hospital bed, and every day they had taken my immune system down to 0, and every day as they took my blood, they slowly watched my white blood, red blood, hemoglobin counts begin to rise, and they would put it up on a dry erase board in my room, and they told me when it reached a certain number, then we will consider sending you home. And I was watching those numbers very slowly rise. And I'd say to them, are we getting close? Are we getting close? I want to go home. And they said, oh, another day or two. I heard that so many times. It'll be another day or two. It'll be another day or two. In fact, one day I said, please don't say it'll be another day or two. I said, well, it'll be another. I said, don't say it. I don't know how to say this, except with my hand lifted to God. I mean this, and Lynn will tell you it's the truth. I can't explain it. I had peace. All is going to be well. I'm going to be okay. Could I have died? Yes, and we all have friends who have passed away because of some form of cancer. God could have taken me. I know that. I can't tell you how I know, except that I clung to John 14:27, and I had peace. To the point that when the day came when they said, you can go home, the head nurse said, we kind of hate to see you leave. You're not like the other patients we have. And I said, well, you've been kind, but I don't want to ever see you again. And I'll say this, and I'm done. I thank God I got cancer. You say, Morris, you're not telling the truth. I am. I thank God I had cancer. Because of the lessons I learned, I'm a different person because of it. Things have happened in my life that I can't even verbalize, nor do I even want to start because it may sound like something I shouldn't probably say. I want to praise my God. I want to give Him glory, and that's not preacher hyperbole. It is the truth. I asked Him, give me another chance. I want to tell people how good you've been to me. And I promised Him that if He would allow me to live, I told Him, I said, if you want me to die is gain, but for me to live, I'll tell them all about you. I thank God I got cancer. And I learned some things about peace that I never would have learned otherwise. Do you have this peace, Christian? Or is your life constantly in a turmoil, despair, frantic, anxious, can't get my locker open type of life? If you don't have peace with God, we'd love to introduce you to Jesus Christ before you leave tonight. Pastor will be around. I'll be around. We'd love to talk to you about the Lord Jesus. Let me tell you what we're going to do before you bow your heads. I'm going to let you stay seated tonight. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to bow your heads. I'll pray very briefly. Our pianist will play whatever song's been chosen. I want you to sit there, and if the Lord, the Spirit of God, sat down beside you and said, you know this was for you, you know this. This was not just for someone else. This is for you. Would you take some time with your Lord right there where you sit? I'm giving you an invitation to talk to God about it tonight. I don't want you to leave and say, I'll talk to Him later. I want you now. If God's spoken to you, I want you to turn and speak to Him. Now listen carefully. When you're through praying, it probably won't take long, but when you're through praying, just stand up. Just stand up. If the person next to you prays longer than you, don't feel guilty. It's not a contest. It shouldn't take long. Just talk to the Lord about whatever it is that's been troubling you, and just stand up. If the person next to you finishes praying before you're finished praying, don't feel rushed. You finish your prayer. Stand up when you want to. I'm going to go down on the front row and talk to the Lord myself. Pastor Tom will lead us in whatever song at whatever point he wants to, or if Pastor Steve steps up before them, whatever they want to do, fine with me. I want you to have time to respond to your Lord. You say, I don't even want to talk to the Lord about anything. Then just stand up whenever you want to. I certainly can't make you. And we'll be around to help you after the service as we can. Let's bow our heads.